Hey. Hey there, everyone. Hey there. Sorry, just checking a couple of things. Hey, Ute. Hope. And how you hope? I'm sorry, Cat. I do apologise. I do apologise. Sorry. Let's see. I think you guys are a bit behind the stream from my perspective. Can you see me yet? Cool. So it looks like we've got 4 people online. Cool. So, hi everyone. This is my first attempt at live streaming. So, yeah, who am I? Who's Rick? So, I'm Rick. As you probably guess, I'm a Londoner and a long-time Dungeons and Dragons player. And I've recently I've recently got into publishing, back into it. But I recently started publishing on the DM's Guild, and I love Dungeons and Dragons. So I've been publishing through my DM's Guild imprint, Grizzly Eye Games, which is grizzlyeye.com. So please go there and buy my latest release, the Vermin. Let's see what's going on here. Someone trying to talk to me. Let's see. So, can you all see? First of all, can you all see the writing on the screen? Okay. So the Vermin. Sweet. So, before we dig in, just want to apologise. So the setup's a bit cheap. So I'm just using my laptop to stream this. I don't have sophisticated cam equipment. It's just me and this rather unpleasant red blotch there, which is a rather nasty fly bite, and just some regular audio. That's it. So it's just my first time going at this, so maybe if it's a success I might invest in some stuff, but I'm a cheapskate, so I think we're going to leave it like this. So so apologies for that. Hopefully this isn't going to be, you can at least see me and hear me, and you can read the text on the screen. That's all that matters. So what am I doing? So today is just a sort of game design / chat session. So I'll probably be going through some game design for my new campaign, The Last Post, and I'll be looking at the Merchants Guild today. So actually this is the wrong page, don't look at that. That's the wrong faction. What we want is the Merchants Guild. So the Merchants Guild is what next? So if you feel free to jump in and ask me any questions in the chat and interrupt me. I'm gonna be dictating, but I can stop. I'm happy to get sidetracked. I probably will get sidetracked. So if you have any highlights or notes or pointers, please pester me about those. So with that ado, let's dive into factions. So, factions are a set of rules that, if we go to D&D Beyond, included in the Dungeon Master's Guide, little known rules. I don't think many people refer to them. But for me, I'm very passionate about them. I sort of spend a lot of time focusing on factions. My current ongoing campaign, the Black Griffin campaign, which I think 2 of my players at least are here today. If anyone else is here, please shout out. So they're quite. So the Black Griffin is at core set. Its core is a faction which I've created, which is the Company of the Black Griffin, which is a mercenary company, and the players play sort of bounty hunters attached to that company, and it's sort of a bit of a skullduggery campaign, and I think it's been pretty successful. I think players really like belonging to a faction, and the faction is pretty useful because it, from a DM perspective, because it gives them an excuse to go out and adventure, which sometimes can be a bit of a struggle to motivate your players. So being part of, I don't know, a military infrastructure or military hierarchy sort of means they can't really say no. So it means that I can send them to places, but as well, they sort of get sent out beyond the confines of the military hierarchy. So they sort of have their own sort of free will out and about when they're out and about. So that works really well. So for my new campaign, the last post, which I'm currently working on at the moment, I wanted to have the players be part of more than one campaign, more than one faction. I want there to be an interplay of factions. It's going to be sort of a sandbox campaign, and part of that sandbox will be about exploring factions and rising up in factions and sort of benefits of factions, sort of acquiring the benefits of factions. So so the inspiration for this, for the inspiration for last post, is obviously it's heavily dependent on the classic Dungeons and Dragons adventure B2 Keep on the Borderlands. So I've long been a fan of this particular adventure. It is a classic. Why is it so hard to get an image of this up? So you probably have seen it or heard about it. It's also a very sandboxy campaign, and I'm actually running it at the moment. Before I run the last post campaign, the 5th edition campaign, using the original. So I'm running the B2 using the original basic Dungeons and Dragons as sort of research for the last post, which will be a 5th edition inspiration, inspired by Keep on the Borderlands. So I think my players are enjoying that. I'm not sure. I hope they are. I'm not sure they particularly like. I think it's pretty hard transition from 5th edition to basic Dungeons and Dragons. I have some thoughts on that, and I'm going to probably blog about it in the very near future once they've finished that campaign. But yeah. So the real inspiration for this, for the last post, is one of my favourite computer games, which is Morrowind, which is another classic Elder Scrolls game, which you probably have heard of. So last post is also going to be heavily inspired by this. So what do I mean by that? Oh, hey, Hope's just joined us. Hey, Hope. So we've got Kat, Hope and Morgan, who are in fact the surviving members of the Black Griffin Fetchers. Thank you for joining me. So I'm just discussing the last post, which I think a couple of you are playing in, and its inspiration is going to be Morrowind. So in Morrowind is probably completely clunky looking game now, but when it first came out, it was pretty revolutionary. I think it probably made the Elder Scrolls a household name for computer role-playing games. But for me, the most exciting part is you start out in the starter village, and then you do all the adventures, perhaps level up. And then once you finish that, you then set off for the nearby town, which is fantastic. You just suddenly step outside this village, which has been very contained and very adventure-y, boxy. Go here, talk to this person, and all of a sudden, you're told to go to the town. You step out the village, and there's a fork in the road, and suddenly you're in an open world, and that was groundbreaking for me. And then you spend it probably doesn't take that long to walk to the town, but it seems like a long time, and it felt so real that I was travelling from the little village A to B to this town, and you get into town, and suddenly you're confronted with a choice. You're given, you find out that there is a mercenaries guild, there is a mages guild, and you also find out there is a thieves guild lurking about somewhere. And to class yourself, to become a member of it's a classless system, but effectively the factions in the game replace the classes. So if you want to be a mage, you join the mages guild, level up in them. They're sent on mage missions, you level up that way. And I thought that was really fantastic. So that's sort of what I'm going to try and emulate with the last post. There'll be very similar factions. I think there's going to be a mages guild or magic guild, certainly. I'm not sure about a mercenaries guild, but there certainly will be the Thieves Council, which is featured in Black Griffin. So faction rules themselves. Let's take a look at the faction rules. So we're going to go through my favourite thing to do, and I love doing this, is to create a faction, a Dungeons and Dragons faction. It might not be you. I hope my stream is pretty chippy, cat. So at the heart of the faction rules is renown. So basically, renown are like experience points. You earn them by going on adventures. You earn quite a few less. You basically get 1 renown for each faction adventure you go on. If you do so meeting the beliefs and goals of your faction, you get 2 renown. And you can see here, this is a standard progression. So you start in the faction with 1 renown. You rank up with 3 renown, so pretty much after a single adventure you'll probably get promoted. Then at 10 renown you get into the middle, 25 and 50 is sort of like pretty high. And I think by the time you've done 50, that's like 25 to 50 adventures you need to get there. You'd be pretty high level. So I think it's quite a steep, it starts quite slow and then it's suddenly quite a steep climb to get to where you want to go, but I think that probably emulates factions quite well. Morgan, why have you told George to stay away from the internet? Oh, okay, so to keep it clear, yeah, if he's streaming anything as well, we're definitely going to get bombed. So probably what's best for me to do is to show you these factions aren't particularly, the Dungeons and Dragons, the Dungeon Master's Guide doesn't give particularly good instructions on factions. So, oh sorry, I need to stop switching screens. So let me give you an example of a pre-built. So Paper by Dropbox is one of my favourite note-taking applications. I use it all the time. Actually, I know. Let's go and look at Faction Compendium. Oh, it's annoying. Okay. Let's do this the hard way. Bear with me. Oh dear. Oh dear, I think Morgan's having internet problems. Bless him. So Morgan is very kindly volunteering to moderate tonight, although I'm pretty sure we're not going to get hacked. We're not going to get a dog pile. Okay, so let's go to factions here. Let's find an example of a faction. Okay, yeah, that's not a good one. Come on. Okay, here we go. So, each rank gives you a title, which I think is super important, especially important in the campaigns that I run, because titles are pretty important to characters, because I don't particularly like second names, and I don't really think second names in fantasy work particularly well. So I like my characters and my players to pick like just a really distinctive first name and then decorate that with titles. So Apprentice Mage, Ugly Sable, Amers the Sour, to name two of my favourite NPCs at the moment. A faction gives so that each faction, each rank of faction, that should be renown. So one renown gives you the rank of Apprentice Mage, and each rank should give you a perk. So you need 5 perks in total. So there aren't any guidelines for this at all. So this is all pretty much made up by me. The Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica does include this kind of stuff. Does include factions, which is using a slightly different system, but I'm not sure I entirely like the way that they've done factions. So I'm sort of reviewing what they've done and coming up with my own system for this. Actually, I know what we can do a better example. One moment. And what do we want to do? We want Black Griffin Player's Guide. There we go. Okay. So this is a better example of a faction. So this is the document all my players see in the Black Griffin campaign. It needs a bit of work, but it's getting there. And this is the heart and soul of it, the Black Griffin Company faction. So I'm just going to go through types of perks we have for the faction. So at first rank, the faction perks generally tend to be soft. Oh, yeah. Morgan's saying that I've turned off all the auto mod settings. Do you want me to turn them on, Morgan? I can do. No? Okay. Let me just check my messages. No. Sorry, this is a bit tricky. I'm streaming this on my laptop and typing on my desktop at the same. To turn on auto mod. Okay, cool. All right. So yes. So rank 1 perks of factions. There's a pattern. There is a design to this. So generally, the rank 1 perks generally follow the sort of soft benefits of your background feature. In fact, I'm not really sure perks is a good name for this. I feel like this should be feature or features, faction features. In the same, you have class features and race features, and background features. I think you should probably have faction features too. So the first rank faction feature should generally be a soft one. So in this case, we have camp followers. I'm not too sure if this is working particularly well. I don't think the players particularly use this. So this says you have contacts in the seedy underbelly of the camp, allowing you to obtain illicit goods and services. When you're back at a Black Griffin encampment, you can purchase fenced or black market goods and other dubious services. So it's pretty soft. It doesn't give you any combat benefits. It's purely a sort of role-playing benefit. And this one's not particularly useful, although mainly because in Dungeons and Dragons, what are illicit goods and services, you can pretty much buy anything. Actually, I think I need to do some work here to actually come up with a list of Dungeons and Dragons equipment items that are illegal, so that stuff like this makes sense. So, second rank benefits are where we start to get sort of more meaty game benefits. So in this case, what I've given is given a sort of, is generally sort of, once you get to second rank, generally what you get is some kind of authority, which gives you sort of social benefits over other people. In this case, when you become corporal in the Black Griffin Company, you gain the command feature, which allows you, just basically gives you advantage on intimidation checks against anyone of lower rank within the company. Pretty straightforward. So this sort of starts to be where I sort of see the factions sort of differing a little bit from other types of, like from the class leveling kind of system. So you have, yeah, I mean, at the moment you're not really seeing the benefits, as Morgan says, you don't really see the benefits of rank outside of camp particularly, which is, you know, that probably needs to have some work on it. Although we recently did have an adventure that was just within the camp. Most of the adventures are outside the camp, so I think Morgan's right, this probably needs a bit of work, because this isn't really a super exciting one, but it does, I guess it does feel good to some of the players that, you know, look, I've got rank and I can boss other people around and I get an advantage to do that, and that means it's more likely, if you tell someone to do something, they're likely to do it, which is sort of a great power fantasy for players. But yeah, if you're out of the mercenary company, it's not so exciting. But what I wanted to do with factions is sort of harken back to sort of basic Dungeons and Dragons. So a lot of things that are missing from basic Dungeons and Dragons from 5th edition that we've lost over the years as the editions have progressed is the idea of followers and the idea of strongholds. So that's what I'm hoping to fill the gap in with the faction system. The faction system gives you sort of, I suppose, where classes make you as an individual powerful, in that you have, you know, physical powers to, you know, hit things or cast magic spells. Oh dear, my players are arguing in the chat at the moment. I can't imagine, so Morgan plays Orin, but I can't imagine Orin kicking anyone's ass. They're too nice. Too nice for their own good. So yeah, so I sort of see factions giving us sort of temporal power. So the rules of Dungeons and Dragons don't really give you temporal power, they just give you power. So in much more intrigue and political games, that all sort of high level stuff. So I can see factions giving you stuff like followers, you know, noble factions might give you access to castles, you might gain, you know, thieves' hideout, things like that. And that's what I'm sort of hoping that these will provide. So you can see here at rank 10 is an example of additional followers you get, in this case a minor retinue, and you get to roll on the Black Griffin followers table. This is interesting because I haven't actually statted out some of these, but you get the idea. You can, this is quite a nice one, you might roll and get a spy follower, which should be quite handy, or Light Guard Retinue. Light Guard Retinue is pretty good because it protects you basically. They have if you're they're sort of swarm-like monster NPC. There's like 8 guards or something, and they basically stand around you, and if anyone tries to attack you, they sort of get in the way and stop that from happening. So again, the next rank up is, again, I'm not sure about it. Bear in mind, this is much of what Orin is tough. I'm not saying Orin isn't tough. I'm just saying they're not as tough as they'd like to as they present themselves. And then there's a major retinue. So next, Lieutenant, you get major retinue, just basically you can roll again. And I'm not sure, this is probably a bit weak sauce. I probably need to review this. I can't even remember what so finally, if you get 50 points of renown, if you'd have adventured, 25 to 50 times under the Black Griffin Company, which case I think will all be probably pretty old, given how slowly the adventures run through. You get Inspiring Reputation, which I can't remember writing. The military prowess is legendary. All Black Griffin mercenaries within 30 feet of you that can see or hear you can add a d4 to all saving throws and attack rolls. You cannot use this perk if you are incapacitated. Okay, so this is sort of breaking what I've already said in that this gives you very clear combat benefits. I probably switched this out, but I can't think of what else I switched out to. Although Inspiring, it's actually not bad. It's actually kind of fun. Although I think by the time you're at whatever level you'd be, probably after this number of adventures, well beyond 10. I don't know if a D4 would be particularly juicy. I couldn't think of. So this would sort of be the level that you'd want to award like a stronghold to your players, but I couldn't really think how Mercenary can sort of do that. So let me just check my phone and see what's next on the agenda. This is so perfectly natural. So yeah, so followers, strongholds, probably also. So the faction benefits I see are soft background features, authority and reputation kind of bonuses. So, for example, I have created a Night Watch faction, and they have authority. So they don't just gain advantage on intimidation against people of lower rank. They can boss, regular people about. They're the city watch. So that's quite a nice one. Followers, obviously, strongholds, we've covered. Resources, so that's something we'll get onto the Merchants Guild, because I can see them being quite a resource. So giving equipment, perhaps, or loaning equipment, and things like that, and perhaps even magic items. I tend to run, as my players will probably tell you, I'm quite low fantasy, so I tend to run quite low magic campaigns. Magic items would probably not be that on theme, but I'm trying to be a bit more high magic. So yes, okay. So that's an overview of factions. So what I want to do now is go through one of my favourite factions, which I think is going to feature in the last post quite prominently, is the Royal College of Magic. So I've given you the sort of skeleton of what a faction looks like, or rather the mechanical version of what a faction looks like. So now I want to cover like soft elements of what a faction is. So a faction of the fluff. I think the fluff's probably more important with the faction. So obviously the players are going to love great benefits, but especially these days, players don't play Dungeons and Dragons just because they get an extra, D4 on their reaction on their initiative or anything like that. They want to be part of a story. So I think the most important part of designing a faction is giving them a core story. that the players can identify with. So we have the Royal College of Magic, which is a working title for my magic guilds. Sorry, I think Hope just had to step away. Lol. Okay. No worries. You didn't miss anything. I'm just going. Bear in mind as well that if you did miss anything, I'm planning to upload this. So this will stay up on Twitch, so you'll be able to go back and watch it, or if you dare to, or if you feel kind enough to. It probably won't, but it's there, and I'll probably upload it to YouTube as well if you miss anything. So the Royal College of Magic. So the Royal College of Magic is inspired by one of my favourites role-playing game. One of my favourite supplements for Dungeons and Dragons, Tome and Blood, which is a 3rd edition book. Which came out in the early noughties, which is probably, in my opinion, one of the best supplements Dungeons & Dragons has ever released. It was part of a series of supplements they released, which focused on 2 of each classes. So I think there was a Rogue and Fighter one, and a Ranger and Druid one, and Tome and Blood was the Wizard and Sorcerer one. So 3rd edition was a very exciting time for us. It was the time that Dungeons and Dragons really sort of changed or became modern Dungeons and Dragons, and it introduced one of the most popular classes, the Sorcerer. This is the first time we ever saw the Sorcerer. So Tome and Blood expands on that, adds a few what they call prestige classes, which are the 3rd edition equivalent of subclasses, but it also introduced factions, organisations that you could belong to, and one of these was a sort of magic guild. I think it was called the Order of the Magi, but I've used that as something else. But this is the inspiration for that. It comes from Tome and Blood, which if you ever get a chance to get hold of, I suggest you buy it. I think it's available, it's definitely available from PDF from the DM's Guild. It might even be on print on demand. So when I'm creating a faction, the thing I focus on first is story, and the Royal College of Magic is no exception to that. So you can see the layout I've picked here. It's very similar to the layout, sort of preamble from the monsters in the Monster Manual. But the most important section is, so the College of Magic, sometimes the Royal College of Magic, is a fraternity of wizards formed to protect the secrets of magic. So the Royal College of Magic is sort of a very sort of stuffy, formal, almost secretive organisation. And to be honest with you, I think it's probably going to be the only non-secret. Oh, I haven't decided yet how public it's going to be, but it's going to be a fairly non-secret kind of faction in my campaign worlds. So people will know about it, perhaps they haven't heard about it. Perhaps they've heard about it, but they have never seen a college magician, but they certainly know about them. And they're perhaps a bit mysterious, but they're not unexpected in the last post. So the first section is the Royal Charter, subheading the Royal Charter, and this is the core of the faction, really. This is their story. So, in ages past, there rose a great scourge of evil sorcerers, necromancers, and witches. To contain this threat, the old kings and queens planned to outlaw the practice of magic. A council of powerful wizards gathered to convince the nobility of otherwise, and they was conceded on one condition: that the council itself become the guardians of magic, keeping its secrets, protecting the innocent, and punishing those who would use it for evil ends. So, basically, the Royal College of Magic are magic cops. They're there to police magic. So they are the keepers of magic. They're the only people allowed to practice magic by royal warrant. And indeed, as you can see here, their symbol is a folded copy of the Royal Charter, wax sealed to their robes. So that already tells you. So that's the core story, is that they're basically there to keep the secrets of magic from the normals, the regular people. Magic is too powerful to be used just by anyone, and the Royal College of Magic are the ones chartered to license it. And for that reason, they make a distinction in magic between, and I've called it dark magic here, but that's actually probably a little bit problematic, but sort of ruinous magic versus the good magic that obviously the Royal College of Magic practices. So that in itself is also quite problematic, but that's also part of the story. So by making this distinction between good magic and bad magic is actually quite political, and changes depending on who's master of the College of Magic at the time, and has been used in the past to sort of persecute other magic users and so forth. Only wizards are allowed to join the Royal College of Magic. So there's actually three categories of magic. There's ruinous magic, and then there's magic, which is Royal College proper magic, formal magic, wizardly magic, and then there's all the other kinds of magic, which we'll call hedge magic. So if you're like a harmless warlock or a sort of a sorcerer perhaps, then you would be considered a hedge magician. But of course those categories can change, and sometimes the college gets quite zealous in its persecution of what is and isn't ruinous magic, and yeah. So that's the sort of core story, and I think there's lots of stuff that's quite useful there for players. So even if players don't join the Royal College of Magic, they're sure to fall afoul of the college's licensing laws. And if they join the College of Magic, then that gives them access to that central conflict. So there's the story, and then there's the second element, which is central conflict. And obviously the conflict here is between the lawful magic and ruinous magic, and that conflict. So as soon as a party join that faction, then they're put into conflict with other magic users, some of whom may be perfectly innocent, some of them probably aren't. And that's really powerful, because it means that I can send people after ruinous magicians, necromancers and stuff, but I can also send them after hedge magicians, and it gives all sorts of interesting sort of moral quandaries for them to ponder upon. So conflict. So there's a third element that you probably need to do when I'm creating any faction, which is mystery. So I usually like to have some sort of core mystery at the heart of the faction as well. I haven't done that here. Probably needs some work, but some of the other factions I've written do have some kind of mysterious elements. So hidden inner circles perhaps, and things like that. That's also quite useful to do, and that's what we'll hopefully be doing with the Merchants Guild. And another component that's quite useful when creating factions are goals and ideals. All factions should have goals and ideals, and they're sort of summarised here in a sort of very short form way, very similar to how we write up player character ideals from personality characteristics that you might get from their background. These are quite short and punchy. They're also quite useful because if the players abide by these goals and ideals, or the PCs abide by these goals and ideals, they get an additional point of renown, which means they can rank up in a faction much faster. Cool. So that's what I'll be doing. Oh, okay, yeah. So obviously then there's rewards and ranks that we have to come up with. It goes without saying. Then finally there are missions. So this is also pretty important. So when you join a faction, the DM, it's a bonanza for a dungeon master, because it means basically I can send them on faction missions, and we need to come up with some missions for each faction, for sure. this is actually quite important because I think it makes the faction more distinctive, because I think that, for me, what really made Black Griffin Company come alive was the type of missions that the players were sent on. Sometimes they were sent on military, so sort of regular missions to, find someone or recover some item, but then there are sort of much more cool character, sort of flavorful missions that are sort of, I can't think of the word for it, but they sort of represent the faction more. So with Black Griffin, the players play fetchers, who are basically bounty hunters who are commissioned to hunt down deserters. So obviously desertion is a pretty big crime in a mercenary company. So that's the sort of core mission in that campaign, is to go and find someone who's deserted and then try and bring them back. And sometimes you don't want to bring them back because they deserted for very good reasons, or sometimes you do want to bring them back because they're bad people and they deserted for bad reasons. So missions are really important as well, I think, for sort of giving the flavour. In some ways more important, because I think giving the players something to do for their faction that's pretty thematic to the faction is a pretty powerful way of making them identify with the faction's goals. Once you've found a deserter and they've found out to be they're not very nice people, that makes you really hate deserters, and perhaps you can identify with them. So the Merchants Guild. So any questions? Let's have a look at chat. See what's going on. I suppose no, you haven't been on a fetching mission yet. Oh, have you not? No, I suppose I haven't really done a lot of them. Something else. So one of my players, Morgan, is saying one of my long-term players is saying they haven't done a fetch mission yet in Black Griffin campaign, and actually thinking about it, they're right, they haven't. But there's a reason for that. So in Black Griffin, at the end of each mission, I basically randomly choose 3 new missions, and the players vote on those missions, which ones they're going to do next. So the reason Morgan haven't done it is probably because they have been fetch missions available, but you just didn't vote for them. So if you want to do a fetch mission, I'll happily provide one, but you have to convince the others to vote for it, and vote for it yourself. Cool. So I think we're ready to start writing up the Merchants Guild. So okay. So I'm just trying to gather my thoughts here. So how are we going to write this up? So first of all, we need the core story of the Merchants Guild. So the Merchants Guild is probably not that powerful in the game world. I think in the last post, certainly, is going to be a much more medieval campaign with Black Griffin, which most of my players are currently playing, and is probably a bit sort of late medieval, early Renaissance campaign. So the Merchants Guild will be... Merchants are probably not considered a particularly important class in the medieval age, certainly not compared to the nobility. And in fact, I think the creation of the merchant class probably spelled the end of the medieval age. So I think that's going to be the core story of the Merchants Guild, is that they're going to be the new guard. So the Merchants Guild is a consortium of merchants. They're sort of banded together in a sort of anti-union, a sort of cartel, to try and challenge merchant. In fact, let's write that down. The Merchants Guild by Consortium. I don't know if that's a particularly legal word, but we can come back to that later. Of merchants. Please bear with me. I know this text is a bit crappy, but I always blame the players. The players are a curse on my life. I'm joking. I love you guys. Merchants Guild, a consortium of merchants who have banded together against the nobility. I don't know if that's precisely true, but that sort of gives the point. Is they are there to sort of try and work. So merchants in the medieval age probably weren't having a great time of it. Let's be frank. The authority of the nobility was absolute, and I'm sure merchants were not free to trade. They were tolerated in their trade, and the only reason they were tolerated was probably because they provided A, income in taxes for the nobility, and B, probably provided economic wealth in other ways, and brought money into the local economies of the noble age. However, they were generally looked down upon, and I think that's what we'll sort of have as the Merchants Guild, is that they are sort of begrudging participants in medieval society. They feel perhaps a little bit sidelined and a bit unhappy in their position that they're in, and I think that's quite a nice story there already. Sort of against the nobility, perhaps, or perhaps I don't know if it's against the nobility, but certainly they're trying to get by, and they bandy together to try and strengthen numbers. Perhaps they'll even cross a few boundaries. So yeah, I can see the Merchants Guild as sort of perhaps another second cross. Let's call this section of silver the Gold Road. So I'm thinking that this is actually sort of quite a core. Gold Road is quite a core metaphor for the Merchants Guild. I kind of like that. It's Gold Road. Gold Road represents the network of trade and that binds the Merchants Guild together. Network of trade routes that binds the Merchants Guild together. So there we go. So we have the Gold Road, which is sort of a nice sort of symbol, this idea that the Merchants Guild crosses boundaries, international boundaries. So that's how they're getting ahead of the nobility. The nobility are obviously constrained by physical location, but the Merchants Guilds don't have that problem. They have a network of trade routes, and they use that to communicate with each other and organise together into this sort of large consortium. And that's where their power is. They're sort of a challenge to the nobility, and they have advantages the nobility don't have. So there we go. So I think we have two of our elements for the Merchants Guild already, which I'm quite happy with. We have the core story. The merchants are the new guard. They are looking to challenge the authority of the nobility, and perhaps even usurp the challenge of the nobility. And we have the core story that they are the Gold Road, this sort of symbol of the Merchants Guild. They are bound together by trade. That's quite a nice symbol, sort of this glittering trail of threads that line nations, perhaps even secretly, and allow the merchants to communicate, perhaps secretly, or perhaps and travel and see each other, and yeah, I kind of like that. So that works. I think I'm pretty happy with that. So I think what we need is a bit of mystery. So I think this is still Merchants Guild still isn't quite popping for me. I think we've got some nice elements, but I think it needs a little bit of a spice. So what we need is a core mystery, a mystery to the guild. An obvious one perhaps would be inner circle, but I sort of feel like the Merchants Guild are they're sort of semi-official. I think if the nobility really knew what the Merchants Guild were up to, just transparently looking at this now, they would probably not be that happy. So I don't think an inner circle within that would probably be a bit of repetition and a bit confusing for the players. So I like the idea of spice. The spice. So perhaps what I'm thinking, the spice is the secret to the guild's success. I'm about to run out of power. One sec. Yeah, I'm charging again. What is the spice though? So I can see that the trade is their power, but sometimes they don't always trade in nice things. And I think spice is one of the more unpleasant things they trade in. Maybe they've managed to pay off some high officials. That could be another thing that they have. I think that goes. Actually, that's quite a good point, Morgan. I like that they pay off some high officials. In fact, some of the nobility may be on side, but I don't think that's the mystery. I think we can pretty much guarantee that, but it's nice to make that explicit. So friends in high places. And then Mercers. Actually, I don't think the Mercers is a name for the Merchant Guild. I think that's a name for clothes merchants. An archaic name for clothes merchants, or an archaic name for the Clothes Merchants Guild. The merchants, not for generic merchants. Keeps its friends close and its enemies closer. Much of its funds, a large portion of its funds are spent paying off, spent buying the favour of high-ranking officials and nobles. Merchants pay off debts, pay off gambling debts, fund lavish lifestyles, and win friends. So yeah, that's nice. I like that. Thank you. So yeah, that's another bit of flavour there. I kind of like that. So they're not, again, that's puts a nice flavour on them, because even though the Merchants Guild is sort of in some ways opposed to nobility, they also aspire to be the nobility and aspire to conquest by making friends. And I like the idea they're sort of creeping up from the roots of society to sort of take over, you know, quietly buying off noble and noble to get what they want. So back to the spice. What is spice? I feel like the spice is perhaps some kind of drug, but I'm not sure if that's a good idea to put into this. The trade in spice is forbidden, but regardless, continues. No good is as valued or in more demand. Commands high prices, but no one knows what it is. Is it some kind of narcotic? Yeah, that's true actually, thank you. Yeah, I can see it being, the Friends in High Places being, yeah, I can see that, like, if you join the Merchants Guild, then you would be able to gain the benefits of Friends in High Places. Perhaps that could even be one of the faction features. But I can also see that if perhaps you're opposed to the merchant, it could also make the Merchants Guild in some ways quite a good adversary, because, you know, suddenly these devious merchants have friends in high places. So yeah, no, I really do like that. No, that's a good idea, Morgan. It could be magic. In fact, I think the good idea is not to define it, but I do like the idea that it, yeah, is it a magic component in magical spells? That could certainly be one powerful alternative, and that would, you know, give them quite sort of almost be like there could be merchant guild in a cabal of merchant guild magicians or wizards. Yeah, it could be anything. It could be, I can't think what else it could be. It could just be a spice that tastes really good. I guess it is a drug, though, isn't it? Technically. Yeah, in fact, maybe it's probably even a better idea that I just don't tell you, because something for my players to find out. So there we go. So I really like this. So this needs to be expanded a bit, perhaps, and fluffed out. But I think we've got 4 pretty nice subtitles here about what the Merchants Guild is about and what we could do with it. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's have a look. So yeah, let's get on the more mechanical stuff and create some ranks and some. These are called rewards, but I'm going to call them features over them. So let me just copy this column here. Okay, so we have our renown points and our ranks. Ooh. Okay, so this is where I'm struggling a bit. It's probably quite the hardest bit, is coming up with rank names for this. I definitely think Merchant Prince or Princess is good for level 25 rank. I like this idea as well, because it's sort of perhaps it's they're Merchant Prince or Princess, but then that's quite close to nobility, and I sort of see their structure as being Burger. I thought Burger was a title for. I thought it was for a title of a. Burger is a good word, though. I thought it was a title for a town mayor. What does Burger actually mean? I've never actually looked it up. A citizen of the town, typical member of the wealthy bourgeoisie. So maybe could be. Burger, okay. So level 1, you become a burger. Actually, I feel like that's perhaps that's sort of the second rank. It feels like a burger is like you've arrived, but I don't think rank 1 should feel like you've arrived yet. I think that rank 1 should feel that you're still trying to worm your way to the top. So this is interesting. So play clueless. Well, indeed. Yeah, a bougie person, indeed. I love that word, bougie. Being quite bougie myself. Yeah, so you have a burger. What would rank 0 be? So this is quite interesting, because the rank name is actually quite a core part of naming stuff in Dungeons and Dragons, and naming stuff in role-playing games itself is effectively world building. You have to be really careful about what you give names to things, because they can have quite profound effects So I'm being a little bit careful here. Perhaps it's a bit premature to even think about what these are going to be. I sort of don't like the word prince and princess because although that actually does resonate with real world titles, there were merchant princes and princesses, or certainly merchant princes, concerned. Well, I was actually thinking, so Morgan brings up a good point. So the running joke in my campaign is that one of the factions is the Janibian concern, which is similar to the Merchants Guild, and I was actually going to call this the Merchants Concern rather than it's funny because everyone makes fun of the name, so I'm probably not going to call it that. Perhaps the Merchants Consortium is actually better. I don't know whether you should put the in the title, just leave it Merchants Consortium. I kind of like the Merchants Consortium. It's a little generic, but I don't think it does any damage. But yeah, what about ranks? What would a rank 0, what would a starting merchant be? Okay. I'm having an idea here. So I feel like the Merchants Consortium perhaps in some way licenses merchants in the same way the College of Magic licenses spellcasters. There's another word for license though that I really like, but I can't think off the top of my mind. Oh yeah, consortium's nice. Broker, trader, bursar. Yeah, so I'm thinking maybe that we have like regular titles, but they're appended with something at the start. So I didn't actually go through the ranks of the Royal College of Magic. It is still in my faction compendium. Is it in there? Hang on, I'm just checking if that. So one technique I've used in some of the other stuff is... Why is my internet so slow? Probably because I'm streaming to you guys. Is adding a sort of preface to a regular title. So you could be licensed burger, licensed trader, but there's another word for it. Sanctioned? That's not a good faction. Yeah, so we have... So the title for a member of the Royal College of Magic is Magician, so you have Apprentice Magicians, Journeyman Magicians, Magician, Master Magician, and Grand Magician. So that's quite nice, because if it was just Apprentice, Journeyman, Master, that's not very... or Grand Master, that's not very exciting, but suddenly you have Magician, that's quite a nice title. Yeah, I agree. Perhaps the Merchants Consortium is nice. And it means you guys can't make jokes about being concerned all the time, which you did with the Janibian concern. Right. Probably one of the most underrated world building tools is the Thesaurus. It's just totally invaluable. Certified, accredited, sanctioned, assured. Assured is quite a nice. Accredited. Accredited's a bit. Assured. Notarized. Confirmed, endorsed. There's a word for it. I'm sure there's an archaic word for this kind of thing. For being a member of a guild, you're considered to be assured, okay, assured trader. That's actually quite nice. So membership of the Merchants Guild is obviously not the same as membership of other. They're not prescriptive in the same way that, for example, the Royal College of Magic is prescriptive. You either are or aren't. Assured trader sort of implies that you can be a trader, perhaps even sort of a trader associated with the consortium, but an assured trader has the backing of the consortium, where a regular trader just doesn't. hang on, let's go. To be frank, I don't know if that was the intent. So, but the Genevieve concern I think works. So 1 second. Okay. So Kat is saying, to be frank, I don't know if that was the intent, but the Genevieve concern I think works if you purposefully want them to be shadowy and confusing. Like no one really knows their deal. That's true. I think, yeah, and I don't really want to step in the toes of the Black Griffin campaign. I think the Genevieve concern is something the players really like, especially one of the new NPCs from the Genevieve concern they really like. So I purposely don't want to step on their toes. I do think the Genevieve concern needs some work though. There's a reason why it's a bit confusing because I haven't actually come up with a lot of stuff. So we have a short trader. So I think the traders are pretty low level. You buy and sell stuff, and you've managed to get the backing of Assured Burger. Is sort of the next step up. Assured, I don't know. I think once you get to the higher ranks there, I don't think you should be assured anymore. I think you are perhaps confirmed. Something and something. To be honest with you, I don't get too het up about this kind of stuff when I'm doing this kind of creative writing type deal. You're doing something role playing. The temptation is that you've got to fill in all the boxes there and then and get it all written down. But I actually find that when I'm writing this stuff, if I leave it to stew, I just find good solutions to the problem. You know, you're not always going to, especially when it comes to naming stuff, you're not always going to come up with the right name, and your faction isn't, or whatever you're writing, whether it be a faction or a subclass, isn't always going to look good in the first draft. It's just, you get started, you write something, you let it stew, come back to it, and then over that and then you perhaps make some amendments, you have an idea, you think, oh, that would work there, you go back to it, add it, and that sort of slow process. Vested, that's a good one. Vested trader, assured trader. I think I still prefer assured on that one, but vested is a good word. What does vested actually mean? I don't actually know. Confer or bestow authority. It has quite strong religious connotations, put on vestments, but it also has secular ones, the right to legal power, property. Oh, okay, that's interesting. No, that's fine, Morgan. I actually think vested is a good term because that's actually quite interesting. So, in the medieval age, not everyone was allowed to own property. Property was a privilege. So, indeed, vested is the legal right to power property. So maybe vested is a better word. In fact, I think you're 100% right. Vested trader is better. The other nice thing about vested is it's very similar to investment. Thank you for that, Morgan. That was really good. Okay, cool. But yeah, as I was saying, you're not going to get it right the first time. So you don't fill in all the boxes. Don't. If you're struggling to think of something, go away and come back to it later. Okay, so I think I'm quite happy with the ranks we've got, especially the lower level ones. And to be honest with you, those are probably the only important ones because I can't imagine my players will get to rank 3 quickly or within the first few sessions. It will give me time to write this up. So I think we have our ranks. The next thing we want to do is focus on our features, our perks, our action rewards. I always struggle with this the first level one is supposed to be a soft background feature. I'm not a big fan of background features, to be honest with you. Generally the players never really use them. Perhaps you should even get rid of them altogether and replace them with hard benefits. Just trying to think. So let's just keep with it for the time being. What would be a nice soft first level, first rank feature for the Merchants Guild? I'm sort of struggling here. Sometimes it's just an idea. Sometimes when you're doing this kind of stuff, I just like to make lists of things. So let's just make a random list with it in not any particular order. Sometimes that just helps. That you're trying to think of one particular thing, whereas if you go through a list of unspecific things, you're more likely to come across it. So I've been looking at this already, and I think one of the core features I want, one of the rewards I want this to have is loans. So one of the core benefits of the Merchants Consortium is access to cash. You can take out loans from them, and those loans increase in value the higher in rank you go, and you can borrow more for longer. You do have to pay it back, but that would allow you, for example, to fund an adventure that you know is going to be profitable. Obviously you lose rank if you don't pay back that loan, and I'm sure there'll be other negative connotations. So there's loans. What else could they? We've talked about how they have friends in high places, so privilege, or perhaps more accurately, or high ranking contacts. In fact, let's say high ranking contacts. It's probably a good one. In fact, that might make them nice. Actually, yeah. Actually, no. So I was thinking that actually you could have a high ranking contact as your first level benefit, in the same way that the criminal has the criminal background has a criminal contact. But would a starting member of the Merchants Consortium have? Yeah, I think they might. So high ranking contact. You start play with a contact, high ranking contact. Work with the DM to come up with a suitable NPC. They might be I don't know, a bailiff. So high ranking contact doesn't give you noble contacts. Yeah, so yeah, Kat, I think that's a really good point. Kat saying it could open up some cool problems with adventure if people get over ambitious and then have problems paying back. Yeah, that would be fun. I can imagine all kinds of hilarious shenanigans as you're visited by Consortium thugs who are going to break your legs, so you have to come up with the money in a number of days. So the high ranking contact gives you access to an official. They might be, yeah. An official, a vizier, or some other noble NPC. I don't know what another word for high ranking is, but yeah, you get the idea. First level, you get some contact in some official's capacity, perhaps. Oh, tax collector is a good one. Someone that's useful to you. Excellent. So I think the rank 2 feature would be loans. You can take out Let's see. Consortium will Consortium offers you loans. No, this is very struggling. To take a loan. Yeah, so so the consortium offers you loans, and what I'm thinking here is perhaps there's some sort of persuasion check. But I don't think I like the idea that your faction features are conditional and may not happen. I think you should just get the loan automatically, but you still have to pay it back. Yeah. You can take out a loan in considerable coffers, merchants, consortium. Say starting loans. Oh, I don't know. Visit the Consortium Guild House. You can borrow, I don't know. I don't know whether to make this a strict figure or to have you roll for it. Let's say 100. Does 100 gold pieces buy you a lot? Yeah, I think it will. You can borrow up to 100 GP. At rank 2, you can. So I'm also going to do something a little bit different, which I don't normally do with rank features, that I want to start doing, which is to make the features scale a bit. So at the moment, the features don't scale. They probably don't always need to, but sometimes I think in this case it is. So at rank 3, you can borrow up to 500 GP. At rank 4, you can borrow up to, I don't know, 10,000 GP, and at rank 5, I actually, at rank 5, you can borrow, I don't know how much. They'll probably never get there, so let's just not worry about that for now. Okay. I feel like at level 3, level 3, sorry, 1 second. Yeah, so level 3, I'm not super sure. I feel like maybe there's some sort of follower, but I can't really imagine what followers you might get. I do actually, I can guard retinue. There we go. You become so important at rank 3, you get a retinue of guards. Roll and 3 guard followers table. Okay. I can't think what else. I can't think what else. But again, I don't think. Again, I don't want to be. I don't want to be filling out the boxes for the sake of filling out the boxes. I think the chances of getting to rank 3 are low, certainly to start with, and I can make up the rest. Some sort of income. Yeah, that's a good idea. Although I think, yeah, no, perhaps an automatic. Yeah, income's a good one. Thank you, Morgan. I'm just going to look up the rules for incomes in handy dandy D&D Beyond. I have to also thank Morgan. Not only is Morgan moderating, but Morgan has managed to give us access to, through the campaign, to the library of stuff in D&D and Beyond, which is so useful. So let's go to the lifestyle. I feel like it does, that's a good idea. So Morgan suggested some sort of that, one of the rewards for the consortium is to get some sort of an income or a contact that gets you 5%. Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Perhaps it is. In fact, what we could do is we could, at this level, you get a noble contact. Contact with amounts of mobility. Work with the DM to come up with a suitable NPC. This NPC owes you a great debt. Yeah, thank you, Morgan. But I also like the lifestyle thing. I think that's something that should be one of the perks that you get already. Let's search for lifestyle. Oh, so slow. There are different lifestyles. Okay, come on. Okay, so the player's guide does define lifestyles and how much they cost you. I like this, but I've always found it really frustrating that they don't offer any like material benefits. Like, you can live a solid lifestyle and save plenty of cash, and indeed you don't pay any penalty for that. So I've always wondered if perhaps we could tie this perhaps to, what does MVP stand for? I never know. You young people use that all the time and I have no idea what it means. Yeah, so I've always been annoyed that these don't confer any in-game benefits. You can spend 10 GP a day and live as well as someone spending 1 silver piece a day, or indeed someone spending no money a day living on the street is as healthy and conducive to adventuring as, you know, eating cash, eating gold coins for dinner. I wonder if this could be tied into the rest mechanics perhaps? That anything below modest, you have to perhaps even roll a check to even guarantee that you get a long rest. If you're living in squalid conditions, you might not even get the benefits of a long rest. And perhaps you might get additional benefits for resting at lifestyles above modest. I think they are used in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. I think the downtime, the expanded downtime activities do use them, and you get benefits because of them. No one's explaining. Cat Morgan, what does MVP stand for? Please tell me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So basically, I think one of the other benefits is you get lifestyle for free. So the Consortium vests its interests in its members, and in exchange it provides a lifestyle for them. It's a sports term. Oh, okay. Well, that would explain why I don't know it. Still, Morgan, you still haven't explained to me what MVP stands for though. But it'll be anything pornographic. I'm going to look. Yeah, that's what I think. It means most valuable player. Okay. So what does most valuable player mean? All my players are valuable. Yeah, so lifestyle, you get the equivalent. So the Consortium funds lifestyle, funds a, let's say, not wealthy, but comfortable lifestyle for you when you become vested burger. At rank 3, you get a rank 4. So at rank 4, this scales as well. So rank 4, you get a wealthy lifestyle. No merchant lives an aristocratic lifestyle though, except maybe the mysterious upper rank, which I haven't decided yet. Cool. Okay, thanks guys. I'm pretty happy with that. We've already got some pretty nice faction features. So all I think that's left to do, we've got another half an hour, is to come up with missions. So I think we've used all of this. I'll get rid of that. That was all very useful. So let's come up with some missions. So another table for this. 6 mission. So let's start with a very simple graded table. Extremely common mission, a middle common mission, and a mission that's very rare and comes up in the 1 in 6 charts. Hamburger. Yeah, that's. Yeah. I guess that's. Cat's making the joke that people make fun of the vested burger by calling them vested hamburgers. So, yeah, naming things is a skill in any creative endeavour. And I suppose one of the things you need to look out for, as I found with the concern, is that if you want having things that people can make fun of is sometimes not great. But yeah, I'm going to keep vested burger. And perhaps it's not bad. So yeah, so I'm creating a simple graded table with a super common mission, a middling regular mission, and extremely rare mission. I use these tables a lot. As I say, in Black Griffin, the missions are randomly generated. I generate 3 random missions by rolling on tables, and that works really well because the players can vote on it, and that gives them agency, and it also gives me pointers as to what they want to do, and it gives them the game that they want to have. So yeah, it's just a really good idea. I really like it. I like randomly generating missions as well because it makes the world feel real. It takes a bit of depth, it takes a bit of unexpectedness, and I think it adds to the sandboxy. Something's really watching. Cat and Morgan are sparring. Okay, I'll leave you guys to that. Okay, so what would be the most common thing the Merchants Guild would have its members doing? Let's just come up with a freeform list again. So, okay. I think the least common one would be a trade deal. You must meet with high-ranking merchant to agree an important trade deal. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's kind of cool. I mean, that sounds a bit dull on the surface of it, agreeing a trade deal, but that's actually got lots of potential because this is the pre-internet age, so any trade deals will need to be agreed in person, which means you have to travel there. I imagine there's all kinds of intrigue that could occur, you know, counter competitors wanting to sabotage the trade deal, spies wanting information on the trade deal. Okay, but again, that's quite rare because the consortium wouldn't go around just trusting everyone with a trade deal. So what other missions could they be? What else would members of the consortium want their members to do? The problem isn't trade isn't really a big adventuring topic. Any suggestions from the peanut guy? Cat? Morgan? No? Okay. I'm drawing a blank here. Let's make a list. No idea is a bad idea. So, buying goods. You might be sent somewhere to buy some goods, selling goods. You might be ordered to go somewhere and sell goods. What else? Why is the text so much here? The text is small here. Clerk of Dropbox paper. Okay, so buying goods, selling goods. Yeah, bribery. Ooh, bribing people. Thank you, Cat. Bribing people. Actually, let's make that. That's not entirely common, but let's make bribing. Bribe. You are sent to bribe an official. Bribe a high-ranking official. Or a noble. Cool, no, that... Well, trade deal is sort of an... Yeah, I mean, you could expand trade deal to be a negotiation with any other faction. Thieves Council... Yeah, well, I mean, that's actually quite interesting, Morgan. So Morgan brings up the Thieves Council, which is... haven't covered them. I don't think I've talked about the Thieves Council, but basically they're my version of the Thieves Guild. I sort of avoided using the word guild, so that's why you have the Merchants Consortium, the Royal College of Magic, rather than the Magic Guild and the Thieves Council instead of the Thieves Guild. It's still pretty much a Thieves Guild, but it's called Thieves Council because it's ruled by a Council of Thieves, sort of shadowy faction. But yeah, I wonder if that's more generic though. Like, there's a separation here between these missions are sort of very unique to each faction, but I also have a table that I used to roll up for generic faction missions, so maybe negotiation. Actually, let's make this trade deal on trade negotiation. You must meet with a high-ranking official. From another faction to make a deal. Okay, cool. No, thank you. That's right. Actually, I think that's right. Yeah. No, that is really good. Although again, surely that would be a mission that any faction would participate in. They're all doing that kind of thing. Let's leave it for now. So that's a good one. I like the bribe one as well. That also could be quite fraught. You know, bribery's illegal. If you're going to, you could have other people trying to compete for the bribe. You could have, you know, bailiffs protecting people from being bribed, or watching for officials, clerks looking at bribery, and you could get into trouble. Yeah, that's true. They could do trade deals with a number of things. You could imagine them doing a deal with the Royal College of Magic. Maybe that's not a bad idea. Like, deal making is the primary. Maybe this should be lower. Maybe this should be more common. It sort of feels like deal making is perhaps what this faction is all about, really. Like money, making money. I think, like, yeah, so making money, buying and selling goods is perhaps the most common mission we sent on the Merchants Guild. But really, what they really trade in is favours and deals. So they bribe to obtain political power, but perhaps the highest thing they do is cut deals with other factions. Noble houses. Okay, cool, no. Okay. Cool. I think we've done it. I think we've got our faction. So we've already seen how defining the missions really is perhaps the core of the faction. So we've got buying and selling goods. So it's not, perhaps that needs a little bit of work, but that sort of defines the core mission. These define, although these are missions in the sense that they're adventures that you could, noddy things that you could create adventures out of, they also are a language which defines what the guild does on its day-to-day business, and that's really world building. So buying and selling goods, you'll be sent somewhere to trade for something and bring it back on behalf of some other higher ranking consortium merchant. Bribing people and then negotiating and sent to Thieves' Council or to the House Lioness to cut out some high level deal. Cool. And you can see how this is sort of really bringing the faction to life. So I think we've covered pretty much everything. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the progress we've made. It's nearly 20 to 10, so I'm getting a bit hoarse as it is. So I think I might call it a day here. I'm pretty happy with what I've got. Yeah, I think that's it. So I'm going to sign off. I think I'm pretty happy with what I've done. I'm pretty happy with the way the Merchant Consortium is shaping up. I'm going to go away and flesh this out a bit. Bear in mind it probably won't look anything like this when it comes to publishing, but I think this is a pretty solid start. We've got all the core elements. I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm going to put a pin in things. I'm going to say thank you to everyone for tuning in and watching my nonsense. I hope you found it useful. I certainly really enjoyed it. I want to thank Morgan for moderating. I want to thank my players for just being the best players in the world. I'm going to, if you like what I did today, go to grizzly.com. There's loads of content there. I regularly post blogs of stuff that I'm working on. And then also, if you go there, you'll see there's a link to go and buy my PDF. So if you really like what I did, I'm not taking donations or anything, but I'd really appreciate it if you went and bought my PDF. So the latest PDF I've got is the Vermin. It's a sort of, I call them monographs. It's a very sort of small PDF document, but it's super cheap. It's only like a couple of dollars. It's about the Rat Folk. I think it sort of brings a new monster / threat to Dungeons and Dragons. It's illustrated by some pretty talented illustrators, like Spain, who you may have heard of, and George Sutherland. I've worked really hard on it and I'm pretty proud of it. It contains 4 stat blocks and an adventure and a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, do that. Follow me on Twitter or Twitch. The links to all my social media on grizzly.com, and I think yeah, and if you like me, hit follow on Twitch as well, please. And hopefully I'll be doing this again in a fortnight. So follow me, stay tuned, and hopefully I'll see you all very soon. Bye.